Hello everyone, welcome to another stream. Um, so before I get into the set review, I do want to talk about a bombshell that just went out yesterday, March 8th. Uh, Big news for MTG players. And yeah, I want to talk a little bit about this. So, as it says, as many of you know, apparently in China, Dominaria, the notes got leaked, and they're not happy about it. They said that it sucks. But yeah, they ended up transcribing the entire document in English, all of the release notes. So we now know what all of the cards in Dominaria are. Um, and apparently they're going to be upping the schedule, upping the release dates of certain things, such as mechanics. They'll be pushed to Monday now, since we already know all this stuff. They might as well start talking about things earlier. Tuesday, there's going to be some preview articles that were already written to give us a look at some of the thoughts. So I guess they're going to show us maybe some cards. I'm not sure. No card image gallery yet, sadly. That's kind of what I want to see, because I think reading big, long passages of text can be rather boring, at least for me. Yeah. But anyway, that out of the way, I just want to preface the stream that by saying that I don't want to hear any of you guys talking about Dominaria cards. Because there might be people watching that don't want to get spoiled, and I think that would be very incourteous to be talking about such things. Additionally, this stream is dedicated to Hour of Devastation Blue. So if you're talking about that, you're just talking about, something that is completely off topic. And I know that I get derailed a lot, but I really don't want to see bunches of Dominaria talk in the chat. So there may actually be timeouts today. I kind of doubt it. I think most of you guys are pretty chill. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit beforehand. I don't really want to see any Dominaria talk in my chat. So if that is possible, then that would be great, and thank you. Okay, let's get straight into this color review. Aerial Guide, 2 and a blue, flying Drake. When Aerial Guide attacks, another target attacking creature gains flying until end of turn, and it's a 2/2. I think this card's pretty bad. You might be able to make it work with favorable winds and give your non-flyers flying, but even then, I think this card is just awful. It's just a 2/2 flyer for 3. We already have like King Jolly's Sunwing, which is a 2/3 flyer for 3 that has a pretty relevant effect. And yeah, I don't care for this card. Aven Reedstalker, 3 and a blue, Bird Warrior, so you can use it in your Bird Warrior deck. It has Flash and Flying, and it is a 2/3. I do like the keyword Flash. I think Flash is a very fun keyword, but even so, I think this card's pretty garbage. If you want a good Flash Flyer, just use Dreamcaller Siren. Aven Reedstaker is not even close to the power level of Dreamcaller Siren. Moving along, Champion of Wits, 2 and a blue. When Champion of Wits enters the battlefield, you may draw cards equal to its power. If you do, discard 2 cards. Eternalize, 5 and 2 blue. This card's interesting. It's really good, as evidenced by Standard, but you do kind of need a deck that works with it. A deck where either you want to throw things into your graveyard, or you just want to draw a bunch of cards. And it's really good with Scarab God, and that's the main deck that it seems to be paired with. You draw 2 cards, you discard 2, and that's great. And that is a May trigger, by the way. You don't have to. I know that came up in Memphis, where people were thinking they had to draw cards with their Champion of Wits. You don't have to. So if ever there's a reason that you don't need to, well, you can do that. But moving along, I think this card's really good. If you can get it back with your Scarab God for 4 mana, then you get to draw 4 cards and discard 2, and hopefully, put some more creatures in the graveyard or lands. And that's why I also think it goes pretty well in GPG, because similarly to Scarab God, like, you can get tons of creatures in your yard and just start recurring them back over and over again. I think Champion Wits is a solid card. Drawing 4, discard 2. That's like insane. That's an even better Cathartic Reunion, which is saying a lot because Cathartic Reunion is quite fun. Yeah, I think Champion Wits is going to be a MVP card. He's going to be an all-star, and he's going to do a lot of work. He's going to work excellently alongside Scarab God and alongside GPG. There's not really much I hate about this card. It's just really good. It's even a 3-drop, and one thing that Arena right now is lacking is access to solid 3-drops. So the fact that we get Champion of Wits and can start using it, that also is pretty sweet. Okay, Countervailing Winds, 2 and a blue, instant. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 1 for each card in your graveyard, cycling 2. I love this card. I realize that it's awful at the beginning of games, and you don't want to be holding open Countervailing Winds on turn 3 to try and counter something. It's probably not going to be the greatest unless you've already gotten a cycle. I'm sorry, not a cycle. Man, I'm forgetting card names right now. A Censor. There we go. Unless you've gotten a Censor in on turn 2, and maybe they just don't have 1 mana open again. But I think the true value of this deck is blue-white cycling, and the longer the game gets, the better this card gets, because eventually you're gonna have 10 cards in your graveyard, and there's just no way they'll be able to, get around that. They can't just pay 10. That's pretty expensive. And this card's just great because of that. The longer the game goes, the better it gets. One weakness of this card is that there is something called, and I'll go up to it real quick, Scavenger Grounds, that we will be able to play with. Wow, look at me spell Scavenger with a K, fail. But yeah, Scavenger Grounds could mess up your Countervailing Winds. So I guess that's something to keep in mind. But I think Scavenger Grounds is more of a card that's built to combat Scarab God, not Countervailing Winds. It just incidentally can also combat, various different counter spells and graveyard recursion cards like Champion of Wits. But even so, even with that weakness, I think Countervailing Winds is going to be great, and I think it may even be a 4 of in my blue-white cycling deck. I don't see a life without Countervailing Winds. Throwing 4 Countervailing Winds, throwing 4 Censor, throwing 3 Drake Havens. It just sounds really fun when I think about it. And yeah, I think this is a star card. Again, I think this card's going to be great. And one thing that's even more awesome about Countervailing Winds is that it is a common. So if you're going to spend a common on something, I think this is the thing to spend it on. Wow, that's a lot of value in a common. I'm pretty happy to see that under that rarity type. Okay, moving along. Cunning Survivor, 1 and a blue, human warrior. Whenever you cycle or discard a card, Cunning Survivor gets +1/+0 until end of turn and can't be blocked. This card's pretty garbage. It kind of reminds me of a card called Jace's Sentinel, which is not a card that's anyone really uses. But Jace's Sentinel, 1 and a blue, as long as you control a Jace Planeswalker, he gets +1/+0 and can't be blocked. This guy, whenever you cycle, he gets +1/+0 and can't be blocked. So they're very similar. One requires Jace, one requires cycling. I think both of them are pretty garbage, and I think Cunning Survivor is even worse than Jace. The Jace's Sentinel, that is. Just the fact that you have to cycle for it to work feels kind of bad, man. And yeah, I'm just not really a fan. Because mostly in your cycling decks, they're going to run a lot of sweepers, and the way they win isn't with Cunning Survivor. The way they win is actually with a card called Drakehaven. So it's like Cunning Survivor just doesn't really fit. He doesn't fit the bread, so to speak, fit the mold of the deck. And yeah, it just doesn't work. Okay, Eternal of Harsh Truths, 2 and a blue, afflict 2. So here's a new mechanic. I don't believe we saw this in any of the white cards, but afflict, essentially, whenever it becomes blocked, defending player loses 2 life, and that's why it says afflict 2. So if it said afflict 3, they would lose 3 life, and etc. It's an interesting mechanic. And whenever he attacks and isn't blocked, you get to draw a card, so you sort of get rewarded either by them losing 2 life or by drawing a card. I don't think losing 2 life is that taxing, though. Like, they could just block this and kill it. And they're going to block it, because I think taking 2 damage is a lot more relevant than... is a lot better, rather, than having your opponent draw a card. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to use this card much. Blue also isn't really a card that's meant to burn someone out, so I don't think Eternal of Harsh Truths will actually be able to pressure you as much as you want it to. Simply because blue just isn't a color thematically that is meant to put much pressure on people. I think if this card were red or black, then it might actually see more play, simply because those colors are meant to generally just put a lot of pressure on your opponent and your opponent's life total. Whereas this card, it's not in a color that really works well for it. Okay. Fraying Sanity, 2 and a blue, enchantment or a curse. Enchant player, at the beginning of each end step, enchanted player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, where X is the number of cards put into the graveyard from anywhere this turn. So it's a Sphinx's tutelage, but, you know, different. So they put the top X cards of their library into their graveyard, where X is the number of cards put into that graveyard from anywhere this turn. I know there's a combo with this card, and I'll go to it real quick so that you guys can see the combo. There is a combo with that card and Fleet Swallower. So you have this out. You attack with Fleet Swallower. There we go. Pronunciations. And you put the top half rounded up into their graveyard of target player, and then target player, or enchanted player rather, would mill the other half of those cards. Is this deck viable? Probably not. Fleet Swallower is a 7-drop, and I feel like there's a lot of ways to deal with a 7-drop creature, especially when it doesn't have haste. They get a full turn to untap and play their Chupacabra or their Contempt or whatever removal spells they're going for. And it's also something that you play on turn 7, so say they don't even have those answers, they might still be able to just kill you before you're able to cast this, because it is an expensive card and requires a lot of commitment. You're probably not even going to get this out on turn 7. It would probably be more like turns 8 or 9, simply because the chances of curving 7 back-to-back lands are quite low. So even though that combo looks really fun on the surface and you can just mill someone out, I think it's pretty bad. Additionally, there is a enchantment hate that's going to be going around, and I think Fraying Sanity will easily be dealt with by many different cards. So I'm actually not too high on this. Maybe it'll be a little bit better in a best of 1 format where we don't have Naturalize in the sideboard, or we don't have Bronodon in the sideboard. Maybe Fraying Sanity is actually decent under that lens, but especially best of 3, this card's going to be increasingly bad. Best of 1, maybe, but I still think I'd rather play other decks than mill, even in best of 1. And if you don't believe me, well, I guess duels they do play. I was going to say if you don't believe me, play duels, but there's actually a lot of mill that goes on in duels in best of 1 with Simic mill. Anyway, let's talk about Hour of Eternity. XX blue blue blue. Exile X target creature cards from your graveyard. For each card exiled this way, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 zombie. So it's kind of like Godpharaoh's Gift on a sorcery. I don't like it because it's very expensive. I'm streaming at the same time as CGB. No, CGB, he's streaming at the same time as me. I am the one who's been streaming at 1 p.m. for the past week. But no, it's just coincidence. I guess he wanted to stream a little bit earlier today. And unfortunately for fans of both of us, it does conflict with the schedule. But yeah, I'm trying to stream at 1 p.m. every single day that I can. But yeah, it is what it is. Anyway, Hour of Eternity, XX blue blue blue, sorcery. Sorry, just woke up a bit ago. No big deal, dude. I understand. So when I look at Hour of Eternity, I think that it competes with GPG, Godpharaoh's Gift, and it's probably just a worse version of it because Hour of Eternity assumes that you have a graveyard filled with creatures. And it has to be your graveyard, by the way. You could not exile from your opponent's graveyard. And say you want to exile 2 creatures from your graveyard, and that's just 2. It's not a heavy amount. If you wanted to exile just 2 creatures from your graveyard, you would have to pay 7 mana to get 2 creatures back. That would be 4/4 zombies. And I think that's way too expensive. For 1 creature, you'd pay 5 mana. And I just don't like it. I think that this card just gets outclassed by Godpharaoh's Gift and the Scarab God, and it just seems too slow for me. And also, you have to pretty much run it in mono blue or a deck that has a lot of blue in it because it does have a triple blue cost requirement. So I could see that getting awkward. I just feel like this card is a trap, and it looks kind of fun when you see it, but I think you're not going to have the mana as much as you wish you could, and you're not going to be able to cast things, and they're just going to run you over. Okay, Imaginary Threats, 2 and 2 blue, instant. Creatures target opponent controls attack this turn if able. During that player's next untap step, creatures he or she controls don't untap. Cycling 2. I think this card's pretty bad because it asks you to get attacked for a turn, and that means they're going to deal damage to you, most likely. Because otherwise, if they didn't deal damage to you, say you cast this and then you just settle the wreckage, then why are you running Imaginary Threats, Like, it would just be such a nombo combo if you're playing Imaginary Threats and then wipe their board up. So you play this under the assumption that you're taking damage, and then they don't untap. That sounds awful to me. I think there's far better cards such as Settle the Wreckage and Sweepers that just deal with their things permanently, and I just don't know why you would want to run Imaginary Threats over those cards. I know it has cycling, so you can filter it, but man, this card is pretty bad, and it's going to be hard to change my mind on that. Alright, Jace's Defeat, 1 and a blue, instant, counter target blue spell if it was a Jace Planeswalker spell, scry 2. This is really good sideboard tech. Like, say you're facing a control deck and you sideboard this in, you just get to counter any blue spell for 2 mana. This card has to be used as some sort of combo that I have yet to think of. I would, I won't put it past you, Cheese Egg. I believe in you, but I can't think of the combo myself. And as such, I will name it garbage until I hear of said combo. It's going to be tough. You have some work cut out for you if you want to make a combo for Imaginary Threats. Um, but anyway, going back to Jace's defeat, this is a sideboard card, and bringing this into a control matchup where you're facing blue is going to be great, simply because you have a 2-mana counterspell, and if they play Jace, you scry 2. I know Jace is a pretty bad card right now. In Ixalan, they didn't give us the best Jace. We got kind of a meh Jace, and that's the only Jace in Standard right now. So I don't think you're playing this so that you can counter Jaces. I think you're playing this so that you can be annoying to a blue deck, and I think it does pretty decently at that. Just having a 2-mana counter anything. You could counter a Nezahal. No, you couldn't. Nezahal can't be countered. But you could counter a lot of big things. You could counter, like, if I just went to an expensive card here, like Unesh. You could counter Unesh, you know? But I think this card's pretty good. It might not be as good as I want it to be, simply because there's not many big threats in blue, but it's really good for Counter Wars. Jace has been in a great spot for long enough, I think. That's a fair point. I know Jace has been pretty overpowered for a long time. With Jace the Mind Sculptor, and then in Origins we had I can't remember the Jace, but you know the Jace I'm talking about, the Jace that flips. So I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, though he discards a card, and then once you have 5 or more cards in your graveyard, he flips. And you're right, we have had a lot of good Jaces, so I guess it's not as awful that we have a bad Jace for once. But yeah, this card's still, like, even though you're not going to be countering Jace's, I think the fact that you can get into Counter Wars with Jace's defeat, that's where this card really shines, is you're in a Counter War, and rather than having to tap 1 and 2 blue for a cancel, you just get to tap 1 and a blue for a Jace's defeat, and it just makes it a lot easier. I think this card's decent sideboard tech. I just call that one Lil Jace. Yeah, Lil Jace and Big Jace. Big Jace being the one from Shadows over Innistrad. And that one is... what would that one be called? Jace... Unraveler of Mysteries? I actually have the card right here, ironically enough. Jace Unraveler of Secrets. There we go. But yeah, that Jace is decent, and I think the 2-drop Jace is decent. Anyway, let's get into Kefnet's last word. 2 and 2 blue, sorcery. Gain control of target artifact, creature, or enchantment. Lands you control don't untap during their next untap step. 4-mana steal spell isn't bad, but the fact that lands don't untap is very risky. I don't think I'm a fan of Kefnet's last word. You're not a fan of those God Lasts cards. I'm not a fan of this one, that's for sure. And the reason why I'm not a fan is because I think I would rather run a card, and I'll see if I can find it. It's going to be a card called Entrancing Melody. I just need to look for it. There it is. Entrancing Melody. X and 2 blue. Gain control of target creature with CMC X. It's like paying 8 mana. I agree. I think you're right, Cheese Egg. I'd rather than paying 8 mana over the course of 2 turns, I'd rather pay, I don't know, 6 mana and I steal a 4-drop. Like, that sounds a lot better to me than Kefnet's last word. And yeah, I don't think I'm going to be playing with this card either. It does feel too taxing on your mana base. You tap 4, like 4 mana is a lot to tap, you know? Just thinking about that by itself, 4 mana is a ton. And then you gotta double that, like, whew, that's expensive. Alright. Nimble Obstructionist, 2 and a blue. Bird Wizard. Hey, we still are getting Bird Wizard Tribal, Cheese Egg. We can still go for this if we want to. And this one has Flash. I think this is the best Bird Wizard we've got. If we want to make a bird wizard tribal deck, I think this is the one that we gotta go for. It's a rare, 2 in a blue bird wizard. It has flash and flying. Let's see what the rest of it does. When you cycle Nimble Obstructionist, counter target activated or triggered ability you don't control. That's kind of interesting. I still think this card's kind of bad because it counters an ability and not a spell, so by definition, you're getting down in value a little bit because, well, you're not actually getting down in value. I thought you were, but you'd actually be drawing a card. So it's not as bad as it sounds. You counter an ability, you draw a card. You could counter a Scarab God ability, you know, and then draw a card. Best bird so far, and it's still meh. Yeah. Maybe sideboard in your blue-white cycling deck, but even then, I feel like it's kind of bad. I really want to look at blue-white cycling and just see if anyone was able to make that card work. Was anyone able to make use of Nimble Obstructionist? Oops. Let's see. Cycling. No creatures in the cycling deck. Not even one. Yeah, they don't like it. They are not impressed. So even the cycling players, sadly, are not a fan. And you're right, it is cycling for 3, so it doesn't meet that cheap requirement that people like to have where it's 2. I just thought that maybe it could be good against Scarab God, and I think in niche cases it is, but generally, if they've gotten their Scarab God out and you're having to counter Scarab God abilities, it's probably not good. Shalin has seen Obstructionist in a few lists. My only problem is, like, the main thing you're countering is Scarab God abilities. That's the main thing that comes to mind. But that comes from a position of defeat. You're sort of just slowing them down, and guess what? When you cycle this, that Scarab God has a new graveyard target. So it's like sort of a Nombo combo that I don't. It slows down the Scarab God, but I don't think it stops him. And I know there's other abilities you can ruin, but yeah, I'm not a big fan. Field of Ruin. What are you talking about with Field of Ruin? I'm not sure what you're talking about with Field of Ruin, but yeah, cycling this, it just doesn't seem that good to me. Are you talking about shuffling their deck or something? I don't know. Anyway, counter Field's ability. Oh, yes. I thought we were still in the conversation of Scarab God, but yeah, you could cycle this and you get to keep your land. So I guess it does have some niche uses, and I want to emphasize the word niche. You're not gonna just win the game with this card. You know, the way that you use this card is for sort of niche board states, and that's why I don't know if I like it. Because it deals with niche problems. I haven't seen a problem that is like, oh, okay, this happens all the time. You know. So I just don't like it. Ominous Sphinx. 3 and 2 blue. Flying. Whenever you cycle or discard a card, target creature you control, your opponent controls, gets -2, -0 until end of turn. I think this card's pretty bad. I know there's a lot of Sphinxes that are in Amonkhet, and we even get Azor from Ixalan. And one might argue that we could make a Sphinx tribal deck, but the problem with Sphinxes is that they're normally 5 mana or 4 mana cards. Like, you don't see too many Sphinxes that are 1 to 3 CMC. Like, almost all of them are 4 or higher. And it makes it kind of awkward with a Sphinx tribal because it just doesn't quite work. Your deck just gets way too expensive. Sphinx tribal, yeah. It's just not something you get to work. And again, Shaolin, I am looking to put Splash Radiant Destiny in any deck that I can. So if I see a card type that recurs over and over again over the course of a set, I will put the Radiant Destiny lens over that card. But right now, as I'm putting Radiant Destiny lens over Sphinx, Sphinx is a Nombo combo because all of them are too expensive. If it was just -2, -2, you mean -2, -2? Is that what you're saying? So then you could use it as like a removal spell. It would kind of be like that Chupacabra, where whenever a creature explores, target creature gets -2, -2 until end of turn. And I'll pull it up real quick, just in case you don't know it. I believe it's Lurking Chupacabra. Yeah, here we go. So it'd be kind of like this. It's alright, we all typo. You should see how bad I typo pun in most chats. But yeah, that would be a lot better, and I think that's kind of what the Sphinx wishes it could have. Shaolin is off Radiant Destiny, and he's on to Pride of Conquerors. Well, those are two different decks, Shaolin. I know you can be like Sam Black, and you can say Radiant Destiny gives you +1/+1 until end of the game, and Pride of the Conquerors gives you +2/+2 until the end of the game. And the joke, for anyone that doesn't know, is that normally when he casts Pride of the Conquerors, he just wins. But I do think there's tribal synergies that can work with Radiant Destiny, and it's a card that I always want to look at because it's pretty cheap, and I think it can work in a lot of decks. But yeah, Pride of Conquerors, if you can just get the City's Blessing, it just does a lot better. You have seen it? Okay. Anyway, Proven Combatant, 1 blue, 1/1 Eternalize 6. This is a pretty bad card. It's essentially Eternalize on a 1/1 creature for 1. I don't like this card at all. It's just like putting Eternalize on a shitty creature, you know? Like, when you see Eternalize, you want it to be on something like Champion of Wits. And this is just Eternalize on a crappy creature. So I'm not that impressed. Riddle Form. 1 and a blue enchantment. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may have Riddle Form become a 3/3 Sphinx in addition to flying. With flying in addition to its other types, and it can scry. This card's pretty bad, but if we're talking jank, I think that Shaolin might like this card. And the reason I think Shaolin might like this card is because there's a card called Deeproot Champion. And I'll pull Deeproot Champion up real quick. So, Deeproot Champion, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Deeproot Champion. This card kind of works with that in the sense that when you cast a non-creature spell, you can have another creature on the board. That's kind of difficult to remove. Most of the time, when you cast Riddle Form, they're not going to be able to just kill it because it's an enchantment. It's not a creature. So, the whole point of that deck is to have a lot of annoying, like, dive down type cards, a lot of cheap counter spells that sort of just tempo out your opponent. And you play Riddle Form and you play Deeproot Champion, and the whole point of Riddle Form is that you get to get flying damage in alongside your Deeproot Champion. I'm not saying the deck is tier 1 or anything. I'm just saying that that is a viable strategy which you can go towards. And you can run a lot of like dive down type cards. Or I know there's a 1-mana counterspell where they have to pay 2 and it counters a non-creature spell. In the right deck, it's not bad. It's still a 3/3. You paid for 2 mana and it's harder to remove. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the fact that this is just hard to interact with, that they need instant speed removal, it's almost like a vehicle. It's almost like Smuggler's Copter, where one of the only windows they have to kill it is generally on your turn, because Smuggler's Copter attacks on your turn and just races them, you know? This card is very similar in that sense. You play it on turn 2, You cast a non-creature spell on turn 3 and attack with them. And it's just hard to remove, like you said. I like it. And I think it goes pretty well with Deep-Root Champions. I think that deck is actually not competitively viable, but it's definitely a thing. And you can have good use with it. Additionally, the fact that you can just dump mana into scrying sounds pretty good to me. I always like scrying, so if you can slap scry onto any card, then I'll be pretty happy about it. Anyway, Seer of the Last Tomorrow, 2 and a blue, Naga Cleric. Blue, tap, discard a card. Target player puts the top 3 of cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So I guess it's a mill card, and one could argue that it's a GPG card. You could argue that you can mill your own deck, and then Godpharaoh's Gift can start getting creatures back. But I don't really buy that argument. I think that is not a good argument, because you're spending 3 mana to just get them out there, and then you have to discard cards just for it to work. And I know you can discard creatures, but I'd much rather just use Minister of Inquiries for 1 mana and then mill myself with energy. Like, that sounds a lot easier, doesn't it? Cast Minister of Inquiries turn 1, mill yourself turns 2 and 3. Seems easier for me. And Seer of the Last Tomorrow kind of just reminds me of a crappier Minister of Inquiries by comparison. But we are not getting Minister of Inquiries. That is not a card we'll be able to play with. That being said, I don't think this card's good enough to go in Godpharaoh's Gift, because you have to cast it on turn 3, and then you gotta dump mana. I'd like it if you didn't have to pay. Yeah, the fact that you have to pay 1 mana per turn does make it kind of awkward, doesn't it? And, I don't know. Discarding could be good because you can discard creatures, but you're gonna lose cards over time. You know, just because discarding is good. We are getting Kaladesh. I know that you and CGB have said that. When are we getting it, and how do you know we're getting it? Because I haven't seen anything that suggests that we're getting it. Did Nate Price drop a bombshell and say that we're getting it? Clearly I'm a little bit out of the loop, because I haven't heard that we're getting it yet. So if you could just tell me, like, Nate Price said it or what, you know, I'm a little confused as to why everyone says we're getting it now. And I know you're probably not wrong. I know you're probably right, but I just don't know where this is coming from. How do we know we're getting Kaladesh right now? Nate said it was coming. Okay, fair enough. I didn't watch his full stream. Here is my question to you, Shalin. Since you are the Nate Price expert, did he say if Kaladesh was coming alongside Amonkhet, or is it going to be something that comes in afterwards? Are we going to get Kaladesh at a later point than Amonkhet? Because I'm not sure, you know? I really don't know. Anyway, Cineas Striker, 2 and a blue. Naga Warrior, 1 blue. Shaolin is never wrong. Those monks, man, they are never wrong. 1 mana for blue. Gets +1, -1 until end of turn, and then Eternalize. There's a card that's in Not Together, block by block. Okay. So at some later point, probably not in the near future, but maybe in the next month or 2, we might get it. There's a card from Duels that I want to go to real quick. So let's see if I can find it. There's a card very similar to Sinuous Striker that I want to look at. Let's do Visual Deck Builder so that I can sort easier and see it. It might be 2 mana. I can't remember how much mana it is. It's an awful card, but that's what I want to illustrate, is how bad it is. Let's see. Here it is. Metropolis Sprite. 2 mana, flying, 1 mana. Metropolis Sprite gets +1, -1 until end of turn. This is 3 mana, so it's a little different. But the same sort of concept. You tap 1, it gets +1, -1 until end of turn. You can only use it once the first time around. He doesn't have flying. I know that Metropolis Sprite has flying, which makes it a little bit better. I think this card's pretty garbage. I never was a fan of Metropolis Sprite, ever. My entire experience playing duels. I don't think I'm going to be a fan of Sinuous Striker just because it has Eternalize. So, pretty garbage card. I cannot see myself playing around with it. I know that when you get Eternalize, you can tailor it a bit more, and say you tap it 3 times, you can get a 7-1. But even then, like, I feel this card takes a lot of work to get working. And I'll concede that it's better than Metropolis Sprite, but man, I think they're both bad. Okay, Spell Weaver Eternal, 1 and a blue, Prowess, Afflict 2. Huh. That card is horrible. I agree. I don't know if this card is horrible. Tier 1, no. But say you want to make a Prowess deck, like in the Is It colors, you know? I think you could get it to work. Like, let's just take one quick look at Amonkhet Red. I know there's a lot of Prowess cards in Amonkhet Red. You have Soulscar Mage, you have Nibble Blade Kenra, and I know these aren't the best cards. This deck does not take the assumption that it's going to be Tier 1. It's probably Tier 2, or maybe Tier 3. But, I think this deck would fit pretty well in it. Like, Afflict 2, pressuring their life total, especially in a Prowess deck, that doesn't seem that bad to me. 2 mana for a 2/1 Prowess, and it has Afflict as well. I like it. Yeah, I think especially draft, like say you were just going to do an hour of Devastation draft and you drew a bunch of Prowess cards, you could totally make it work. And yeah, I like it. Not Tier 1 or anything. It's not going to be in any of my competitive decks, but as far as a draft card or just a Prowess creature goes, I think it's not bad. Okay, Strategic Planning. Planning. Gotta pronounce my G's. Strategic Planning, 1 and a blue, sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Now, I think this card actually saw play in GPG type decks, or maybe it was cycling decks. I can't remember which, but I think the reasoning is that you get to put a bunch of things into your graveyard, which helps. And you get to look at the top 3, pick 1, put 2 into your graveyard. I kind of like it. The one thing I don't like is that it is sorcery speed, which can make it kind of awkward in decks that want to play at instant speed. But I don't think it's awful. I can see how people would use this in GPG or other decks. It's kind of like a worse Telling Time to me. And I know Telling Time doesn't put things into your graveyard, so Telling Time wouldn't go in your GPG deck, but comparing it to Telling Time, I still think I'd rather have Telling Time. You spend 2 mana at instant speed, you look at the top 3, put 1 into your hand, 1 in the top of your deck, 1 in the bottom of your deck. That's kind of the comparison that I have to make. Striped Riverwinder. Alright, 6 and a blue, hexproof, cycling 1. I'm a big fan of cycling cards. This is not one of them. This card's kind of weird. Like, if you look at it up close, it almost looks like a comic book card, because you can see the outline of the of everything. There's definitely an outline going around this entire card, which is strange, because Magic doesn't normally do that. The best Hollowed One card. Let me just go to Hollowed One real quick so that I remember what you're talking about. Ah, yes, Hollowed One. I think Hollowed One is pretty bad, and I know that it's seeing play in Modern, but in Standard? Is there Standard Hollow One? Not that I've seen. But yeah, I guess you could get this out for cheap. They've gotten so stingy with good hexproof creatures. They did give us Carnage Tyrant Cheese Egg. So they haven't gotten too stingy. They've given us Carnage Tyrant. But as far as Striped Riverwinder goes, yeah, pretty meh. I never want to play 7 mana for a Hexproof 5/5. It's just why not just pay 6 mana for a 7/6 Carnage Tyrant, you know? That can't be countered. Okay, here's a fun one. Here is one that I have been excited to talk about. Supreme Will. 2 and a blue. Choose 1, instant. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. Or, look at the top 4 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. I am a huge fan of this card. And one reason that I like it so much is that it's 2 and a blue. And you don't have to hold 2 blue open, which is one thing that makes Cancel really awkward. It's one thing that makes Admiral's Order really awkward right now, is that holding 2 blue open can be rather annoying. So the fact that you can be a little bit easier on your mana base with Supreme Will, and it gets another effect, not only is it easier on its mana base, but you get to look at the top 4 as well. You don't have to just use it as a counterspell. It's just such a versatile card, and I really like it. I love just digging for cards. I think that's really good. Like, say you're in a board state and they're just overpowering you, you know? Like, they have all the creatures out and you need to find a sweeper, and your counterspells are dead at that point. Because I get into those board states a lot. I'm sure you guys do as well. You just play that control deck and your counterspells aren't quite working because they just have a dominant board state, and you look at your counterspell and you're like, okay, this is useless. I just wish I didn't have it in my hand. Well, now you don't have to. Now you can cast Supreme Will at instant speed, too. You can cast it at instant speed and look at the top 4, put 1 into your hand. Like, that seems really good. You just get to find that sweeper that you're looking for. Find whatever you're looking for. I'm just using one example, and I'm sure there's many other examples of why you would need to look at the top 4. And I really like Supreme Will. I like the fact that you can go digging with it. I like the fact that it doesn't have to be an instant or sorcery, you know? They easily could have written, look at the top 4 cards. You may choose 1 instant sorcery among them and put the rest on the bottom. No, it doesn't say that. It says any card. You can find your Scarab God. You can find any number of things. Anything you want. You can find a land. You can find a land with your Supreme Will and grab it. So this card is just bonkers, and the fact that it's an uncommon makes me so happy. I think this is the strongest card in blue that we're getting from Hour of Devastation, and it is such a good card to spend an uncommon on. Oh my goodness. I can easily see myself spending tons of uncommons on these just because of how good it is. Yeah, not really anything bad to say about this card. Like, it just does exactly what I want it to do. You don't even need to spend rares on it. Like, I'm surprised that it's not a rare because of how good this card is. But yeah, nothing bad to say about Supreme Will, that's for sure. Okay. Swarm Intelligence, 6 and a blue enchantment. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Interesting. So, I got a question. I'm going to go to artifacts real quick. Actually, I'm going to go to double face cards. It is an artifact. Primal Amulet. Instant and sorceries you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever you have... Let's see. Whenever you cast one, you put a charge counter, and if there are 4 or more, you may transform it. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. When that mana is spent to cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy that, and you may choose new targets for the copy. Very similar to Swarm Intelligence. Which one do you like more, or are they both bad? I think they're both bad. I know you can compare those 2 cards, and you can argue the merits of either one. I think both cards are just not good enough, and I'm not going to use either of them. It's just too slow. 7 mana to start copying your instants and sorceries. I don't think that's what I want to be doing. I think I'd rather be going for better things than Swarm Intelligence, that's for sure. There's got to be better cards that you can spend on for 7 mana than just copying instants and sorceries. I know it's kind of a win condition where you can gain control of the board once you resolve this, and if you can, empty their board state out, it's just really good. But I just don't like it. I think it's too expensive. It kind of falls under that lens that I've been having, where I just look at these enormous enchantments that cost 7 or 8 mana, and I'm like, okay, can I really get this to work? I don't think I can. There's a lot of big, expensive enchantments, and I think most of them are traps. And this one falls under the trap territory. Okay, Tragic Lesson, 2 and a blue. Instant, draw 2 cards, then discard a card unless you return a land you control to its owner's hand. Sunbirds is better. In the right deck, it is. In the right deck. Like, Sunbird's Invocation, the kind of deck that you make with Sunbird's Invocation, and I do agree with you, Shalin, I think it's better. First of all, it's 1 mana cheaper, and let me tell you, the difference between 6 and 7 mana is pretty big. A full turn earlier, you can get this card out. Now, let's pair it with... The card that I like to use it with is the card called Star of Extinction. If you're just going to go use expensive cards, you might as well just play Star of Extinction as well. You pay 7, and say you copied it, Say you copied it with Swarm Intelligence, and that's true. That is any spell, Shalin, so another good point. But say you copy Star of Extinction, you're just going to be dealing 40 damage at that point. I guess you'll be able to destroy a land. You'll be able to destroy 1 more land. But at least with Star of Extinction, you get to look at the top 7 cards of your deck and then cast any of them for free. I agree. The fact that this works with creatures as well, works with artifacts, works with just about anything, not just instants or sorceries, is relevant and will come up. I'm not gonna say I think Sunbirds is great, by the way. I'm not gonna say, oh, Sunbirds tier 1, but no. If you compare those 2 cards, Sunbirds by far is better. Okay, Tragic Lesson, as I was saying, 2 and a blue. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card, unless you return a land you control. Huh. That's not bad. I'm surprised I haven't seen this card more. 3 mana to draw 2 cards, discard 1 at instant speed. Part of the reason we might not see that card is because there's a card in blue that I'm going to get to. See if I can find it. It's in here somewhere. Let's see. Looks like I missed it. There we go. Chart a Course. So I think the reason that we're not seeing that card in Standard is probably because Chart a Course does the same thing for 1 less mana. I know that you get to return a land, so it's a little different. Tragic Lesson is obviously going to be a little better than Chart a Course late game. If you have a ton of lands out, you don't have to discard. But I think Chart a Course you just play over Tragic Lesson. And that's all I gotta say. This is a really depressing card, by the way. It looks like Kefnet just got hit by like a sniper round, and that's really sad. We don't see any of those mediocre draw spells because Standard has Glimmer. Well, that's another thing. They have Glimmer, and they also have Chart a Course. And I think both of them outperform Tragic Lesson. But yeah, everyone runs Glimmer. You know what's strange about Glimmer, by the way, is I was watching Memphis the other day, and this guy was running Glimmer, and he built up 10 energy over the course of the game, and he didn't even have a card to dump that energy into. That's how good Glimmer is. It gives you energy, and control players don't even care. They don't even care about having 10 energy. They don't have any cards in their deck or sideboard that take advantage of all the energy they were getting. Like, it was crazy. He casted Glimmer, and then he started Torrential Gear Hulking casting Glimmer, and eventually he got to 10 energy, and he didn't even, like, he didn't even use it. And his sideboard couldn't use it. There was nothing to take advantage of it. And that's just a sign of how good Glimmer is. Like, the fact that You're not even using one of the elements of it, and it's still doing work. Looks like he got stabbed in the head to me. Yeah, it looks like maybe right there. It looks like that could be a stab wound. Though Kefnit's followers feverishly searched his last words for some final riddle, they found only the gurgles of a dying god. Man, that is fucked up. Card is messed up. Let's talk about Unish. Alright. Unish, Cryo Sphinx, Sovereign, 4 and 2 blue. Legendary creature, Sphinx. Flying. Sphinxes you cast cost 2 less to cast. See? See? We can go for this Sphinx tribal deck, Shaolin. Our Sphinxes cost 2 less now. You don't have to spend 5 mana to cast them. You can spend 3 mana to cast them. When Unish, Cryo Sphinx, Sovereign, or another Sphinx enters the battlefield under your control, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put 1 pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Okay. So you're gonna get a lot of card advantage. You could also mill yourself out because that's a lot of card advantage, but I don't think you will. I think you'll be able to stay afloat with your library. But this card's pretty bad. 6 mana for a 4/4 flyer that sort of just helps other Sphinxes out. Sphinx's Tribal is not a thing. If Sphinx's Tribal was a thing, maybe. But even then, it's like a 6 mana 4/4 flyer that just sort of helps other cards out. You gotta run a Sphinx deck for this card to work, and I don't think you can. Yeah, I'm just not a fan of this. I know they're trying to sell me on these Sphinx cards by throwing a bunch of Sphinxes into Hour of Dev, but I'm not quite sold. I'm not going to buy into this Sphinx phenomenon. Okay. Unquenchable Thirst, 1 and a blue. Too expensive and gives your opponent too much control. Yeah, they can really mess you up. I agree. Enchant creature. When Unquenchable Thirst enters the battlefield, if you control a desert or there is a desert in your graveyard, tap Enchanted Creature. Enchanted Creature doesn't untap during its untap step. I want to dislike this card, I really do. But if you have enough deserts out and you can just lock down a card where it can never untap, that's not bad. I think Unquenchable Thirst, like, 2 mana to lock something down if you have a desert. The problem is you do have to have a desert, you know? It doesn't work if there isn't a desert. Unless they were already tapped. Say they were already tapped, then it just would never untap unless they found a way to make it. I still think this card's kind of mad, though. I'm the kind of guy that just likes to kill creatures and not just put enchantments on them, you know? I'd much rather be casting Baffling and exile the creature so that I don't have to deal with it later. And rather than them destroying Unquenchable Thirst, it's just a little bit better. Yeah, it's just okay. If you're running like a mono blue deck and you need to have removal-esque cards, I guess Unquenchable Thirst is the card to go to, but I'm not really a fan of it. Unsummon, 1 blue, instant. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Wow. Okay. That's pretty cool. Yeah. 1 mana, bounce anything? I like it. Skills mastered by initiates, not anything, it has to be a creature, but skills mastered by initiates are preserved within cartouches, so Eternal remain adept at their preferred combat style. Yeah, that's for sure. Fucking bouncing this person. Damn. I really like this. It's not something that I know if I'm going to use a ton, but the fact that we have it is fun, you know? The fact that we have access to this card and can throw it into decks seems pretty cool. Just the tempo that you're able to get with Unsummon is just insane. 1 mana to bounce whatever you feel like bouncing, whether it be a token where you actually get value or a big creature where it stalls them for a while. Yeah, it's definitely a nice tempo card, and I'm a fan. I think Cheeseegg has good reason to be hyped about Unsummon. Is it going to be in top tier decks? Maybe not, but I think there's always going to be decks that can use this card. You know, you're always going to be able to build some sort of tempo deck where you throw an Unsummon in and can just do awesome things. Bouncing Boon, baby. What does that mean, Bouncing Boon? I haven't heard of that one. Anyway, final card. These streams are a little bit shorter. I do apologize because Hour of Devastation is simply just a shorter set than Amonkhet is. So it takes a little bit less time to talk about certain things. But I'm going to be talking about Vizier of the Anointed, 3 and a blue. When Vizier of the Anointed enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a creature card with Eternalize or Embalm. Put that card into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. Whenever you activate an Eternalize or Embalm ability, draw a card. I want to like this guy, but I think for 4 mana, I can't really like him. If he was a 3 mana card that did this, maybe we'd be talking. But you're having to spend a lot of mana to make Vizier of the Anointed actually work. Basically, bouncing a card and replaying it for value. Oh, okay. So say you had Angel of Invention, first thing that comes to mind. You just unsummon your own. Yes, I like that. Yeah. No, that's a good idea too. It doesn't have to just be your enemy's creatures. It can be a good ETB creature of your own. Anyway. Yeah, I think this card's pretty meh, simply because it's just too expensive. If it were cheaper, sure, that would work. But you really need to do a lot of work for this card. Like, you have to tap 4 mana, and then you need to actually Eternalize something or Embalm something just to get value. I don't like it. I feel like they're going to be able to deal with Vizier of the Anointed, and he's just an expensive card. There's other 4-drops that are better than this, and I can't get behind it. I really can't. But anyway, that is going to do it for this set review. We're getting quick, like really fast right now. And every review I'm gonna do is probably gonna be a little bit shorter, simply because the set is shorter. Amonkhet, there were more cards in each color type. For Hour of Devastation, there's less cards in each color type because it's a smaller set. So naturally, the reviews are going to be a little shorter. But I will be streaming again tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And yeah, I hope you show up. It's going to be a lot of fun talking about cards like Doomfall and Bantu's Last Reckoning. That's going to be a lot of fun for me. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.